One night I was having trouble sleeping. This is uncommon on a full moon, and I was waiting for it to slip out of vision. I could see it outside my window, and I had watched it rise up out of the forest that surrounds my house. It was 12:30 a.m. at the time, and I decided to get out of bed and watch the moon from my window. The room was filled with a sound of deep breathing, that of my girlfriend Tammy, who was sleeping soundly. I envied her. The moon was large and slightly golden color. I rubbed my eyes and sighed. When I looked back out the window, I saw a faint light in the distance. At first I thought it was headlights, maybe one of our neighbors coming home. I observed it more closely. It seemed to be stumbling and moving towards our property, very, very slowly. I was becoming very uneasy, but proceeded to watch it for around another 5 minutes. As it grew nearer, I could make out the figure a little better. At the point I wish I hadn't. It seemed to be an infant, a toddler wearing tattered dress, from what I could see. There was something weird about its motion, though. It swayed violently from side to side, placing its leg out in front as it did so. I decided to wake Tammy up because this is just too strange. "Hey," I whispered. What's wrong, Chris?" Tammy said, completely in a haze of half-asleep confusion. She rubbed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "Have you seen this?" I took her hand and led her to the window. It was gone. "Damn it!" I said in frustration. "What's going on?" I stared out the window for a moment longer and saw it reappear from behind a tree. It was making its way left from the road. It had been walking down directly onto our fenced property of about 4 acres altogether. It was still quite a distance from our house, though. What the hell is it? What do you think it wants? The fear was evident in my girlfriend's voice. I don't know." The toddler stepped and turned its head towards our window. I quickly dropped to the ground and pulled Tammy down with me, hoping it didn't see us. Then I waited for a few moments before I had a look to see what it was doing. It was now walking in our direction. It was then I realized what it was, though the idea seemed impossible. A doll? "It's coming," I whispered fleetly, fear tinging the syllables as they popped out. "Why? What do you think it's gonna do?" "I don't know. I really don't. I never liked dolls." The room was filled with the sound of my heartbeat. It was pounding against my chest, trapped in my rib cage. It echoed through my head, and I desperately wanted to stop it because that thing, could hear it. Then it would find us for sure. Neither of us dared to move at that point. We listened for what seemed like hours, but eventually Tammy fell asleep in my arms, while I stayed and listened for long after. The only sound that reached my ears were slow taps. Tapping. Possibly on the window, but I couldn't bring myself to look up to find out for sure. I don't know how, but I managed to fall asleep. I know that because I woke to the sun shining brightly in my eyes. The sky was filled with large scattered clouds, one which soon covered the sun, blocking its warm rays. It was early afternoon, but everything seemed sinister. Tammy was still laying next to me on the floor. I got up, carried her to the bed, and then tiptoed out of the room to look for anything that brought sense to clarity to what happened the previous night. I inspected the hall. Nothing. The bathroom. Nothing. The living room. Then I sighed with relief, but then I saw it. Bloodied handprints were splattered on full length on the windows. A series of tiny handprints, all made by a left hand. It was all real. It happened. Maybe I needed to research the history of this place. I knew that an old lady owned it before I did. She had passed away a few years ago, and the house was put up for sale. I knew there was an old box of books of hers in the basement. I had never went through them because I didn't think it was right. But then at that moment, I needed to know what the hell was going on. "Morning, are you okay?" Tammy's voice resonated from behind me. "I guess." I smiled, trying to reassure her that everything was going to be fine. Although I don't think it wasn't very convincing. "Find anything?" I nodded and pointed to the handprints on the window. "Whoa, this is really messed up." "We have to find out what's happening. I'm not waiting for it to come back. Let's go through the old lady's books. Maybe we'll find something." I was glad Tammy had drawn the same conclusion I had. So we proceeded to the basement. It was the old box in the dusty corner, covered by a dirty old sheet. There were some decrepit books, probably diaries, and old photographs. Tammy picked up the book, discovering it was the latter, started flipping through them. I picked up another strange book. It was not a diary. Instead, it contained incarnations and things of the occult. It was definitely associated with a form of dark magic. My eyes widened as the puzzle pieces clicked into my mind. Holy sh! I thought I found it. I think I found it, I mumbled. Quietly, yet excitedly, half trapped in a maze of thought. "Let me see. I think I found something too." As I handed her the book, I found she reached me a musty old photograph of a little girl with long braided hair. She had dark eyes and was probably around 8 or 9 years old. The oddest thing about the photo was that she seemed to resemble the little doll she was holding. It seemed to be an exact replica of the little girl. We were on a good start, but needed more information. I flipped through the pages of the strange book, and we had found a page marked with a line of dark crimson blood, traced down to the right side of the page. Written on the page was an incarnation to transfer your soul to an inanimate representation of yourself, so that it may grow old instead of you. This little girl didn't know what she was messing with. Where would she even find this? I asked, astonished. "I don't know. Maybe somebody gave it to her. She wouldn't have known it existed," Tammy suggested. There were 2 other little dark books on the box. One titled Marie, and the other Annie. One name rang a bell. I knew Annie was the name of the lady who used to live there at the house. I started reading Marie's diary, and Tammy read Annie's. "They're sisters," I said. We continued to flip through the tired yellow pages. "Yeah, Annie seems to be very worried about Murray in this century. She says she's been acting peculiar," Tammy remarked. "What's the date on it?" I asked. 6th of June, 1958. I flicked to the page in Annie's book. "I'm so frustrated with Mama and Papa," I read. "They never listen to me. I'm old enough to know what's best for me. I'm old enough. I don't need their permission to leave the house. If I want to go, I should just be allowed to go. This is not prison." Clearly Annie was dealing with some childhood angst. Nothing too strange here. I looked through the few pages before that, and she mentioned something about the ritual and that it had been completed, and that Marie would remain beautiful forever. As I read, I saw that it read, "But if her body loses its life, her soul will resurrect the inanimate representation 50 years after her death, so that it may return to her body." "Marie died a week later. Apparently she drowned," I said, flipping through the pages. "Oh," I said fearfully, letting it all sink in. Tammy reached the diary to read the entries with her own eyes. "So the doll is Marie, and it was returning to the body?" Tammy theorized. "So wait, she must be buried here somewhere. Then, what happened after she finds the body?" I said as I quickly skimmed through the lines of the marked page. I found the instructions to the ritual and read them out loud. "The resurrection charm is to be placed on the body's chest. Draw blood from a living person unwillingly, let it spill onto paper or wood, engrave with the name, age, and death date of the body. Then it must be burnt, and the ashes sprinkled in a circle around the corpse." I drew in breath. "Once this has been done, a nail must be driven into the heart of the representation to allow the soul to escape. The soul is then free to return to the body, but if it gets lost or does not wish to return to the body, then it is doomed to wander the earth forever." "Is that the only way her soul can be connected to her body once more?" Tammy inquired, clearly shaky from the news she had learned. "There is another way," I mentioned, "but it's very risky. If you choose to resurrect the body before the soul is back inside it, this option recommended if you had performed the soul exchange and your body has died. The living corpse will most likely destroy you. If it does, the body will destroy itself also. To do this, instead of driving a nail through the heart of the representation, you must offer a part of yourself and nail it to a tree with the resurrection charm symbol carved on it. The body will rise and may either take the nail and drive it through the heart of the representation, destroy the representation, or run away and kill everyone in sight." I read all we needed to know. I stood up, went up the stairs, and out of the dark, damp basement, Tammy followed me. "I wonder if it has the blood," I remarked. "Chris, your arm!" Tammy cried out in complete shock. I inspected both my arms, and I couldn't see anything. Then I saw the nail of bloodstains on my shirt. I lifted up my sleeve to find a rather small and deep cut near my shoulder. This wasn't there last night. She was here? She watched us sleep and... We have to kill it. I want it gone. Tammy exclaimed, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She was clearly close to panic, and I wasn't too far behind her. But the more freaked out I became, the more determined I became to kill this thing. To get it out of here, I proceeded to the living room, then went to the front door. I found it to be unlocked. That was how it got in. It was not a human. It didn't want to think of it as having any human qualities. It was a demon, a monster, a plastic doll, nothing more. I went outside and peered into the woods, taking in every detail. A chilling breeze rushed through the trees and brought with the smell of burning. It's almost finished. We have to stop it. I ran into the forest against the wind, its cold biting at my face. I turned around to see where Tammy was. She was running behind me with a knife in hand. I brought this just in case, she said from out of breath from the run. Good. We waited for a while, crouched into the thick forest listening. An unearthly shriek filled the air and was followed by the sounds of growling, like a deranged animal making mincemeat of its prey. I grabbed Tammy's hand. We paced slowly towards the source of the noise. We got closer, and the sound became more distinct. I stepped on a stick, and I broke it under my foot. I winked. Everything was silent. The noises hushed, but then we heard rustling behind us. A chill prickled up my spine. My head whipped around, but I couldn't see anything. There it was again, the rustling, only this time to the side of us. It was obviously moving very fast, whatever it was. Tammy raised her knife and ready to defend if we had to. We had moved closer to each other, seeking comfort while feeling completely surrounded. All of a sudden, she was ripped from my side. Tammy screamed and the knife flew out of her hands. I turned to see that a creature with long dark hair and abnormally large eyes ripping into my love. It had extremely pale gray skin, thin body, bony arms. Around it, its lips were blue, a feature of suffocation or drowning. It crawled at Tammy's stomach. As she flailed and struggled against its unusual power, I quickly grabbed the knife's handle and drove it into the back of the creature. It had no effect. I winced and pulled it with all my might, and eventually lugged the creature off. Tammy, who was now covered in blood, injured badly. The corpse of Marie let out an ear-piercing shriek and clawed viciously at my arms with her bony, decomposed fingers. I pulled out the knife and attempted to decapitate the creature, sawing into its cold, clammy neck. Its claws sank deep into my flesh, causing blood to flow in streams of bright red down to my arm. I finally regained enough strength to drive the knife into all the way into its neck to sever the head. Marie's head dropped on the ground with a thud. The body stopped struggling and went limp, twitching slightly in erratic motion. I released it and watched it fall. I rushed over to Tammy, who was growing more and more pale and seemed to be near unconscious. Blood was covering her torso and was still seeping from her deep wounds. She had lost a lot of blood. "It's done. It's done. We did it. It's not coming back," I reassured her gently. She nodded weakly, and I inspected her injuries. They were deep scratches from her arms, face, and even worse, on her stomach. She was not lucky to be disemboweled. I looked back over at the body of Marie and saw it was gone, vanished. I looked back at Tammy. She was gone too. Well, now this one was just downright sick for a creepypasta. And yes, it's supposed to be kind of like that, and it's just very kind of weird that somebody would actually perform some kind of satanic ritual or something to try to transfer your own body into an inanimate object or something like that gives you a strong resemblance. And yeah, it just kind of resembles that of many stuff you probably see on the internet now these days about creepy dolls and all that sort of. Anyways, feel free to comment, rate, and favorite this video, subscribe to my channel, look me up on Facebook and all that. So anyways, this is Marshall Leon signing off for now.